ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तन्न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Now we saw the 27th verse, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. So madarpanam, not just food, offering of food to Bhagavan, but coming to the culmination of Karma Yoga. What is the culmination of Karma Yoga? Offering everything to Bhagavan. One's actions, whatever one does, is for Bhagavan, because if you put yourself in it, what will happen? You put yourself as the agent of the action, or you put yourself as the reaper of karma phala. Both those statuses, both those positions are really fraught with a lot of pain, with a lot of guilt, hurt, all these things. If you brand yourself as an agent, then one is subject to guilt, and then otherwise one is subject to what? Hurt. So therefore, yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, whatever you do, whatever you eat, so you offer it to me, in the sense that Ishvara is considered a proxy actor. Ishvara, Bhagavan, is the proxy actor. Who are you? You are just a nimitta. This is what he is told in the 11th chapter. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. This one Arjuna is told by Lord Krishna, just be an instrument. Don't be an agent, don't be an author, because if you are the agent, you are subject to guilt, because immediately thoughts come, I'm not doing properly, I should do more, I shouldn't have done this, why didn't I do this? And if you say, I'm the recipient of the results of the action, then why me? Why only me? Why isn't it happening to anybody else? This is the hurt. So guilt is what? Your own omissions and commissions. And hurt is the omissions and commissions of people around you. And so why did they not do this to me? Why did they do this to me? This is how this is how we avoid both those things. And then a question might come that this teaching is for whom? Karma yogis. It was already said, Sannyasa yoga yuktatma. Sannyasa is not sannyasa here, karma phala tyaga, not karma tyaga. Sannyasa means karma tyaga, giving up of action is sannyasa, but here we are talking of giving up of the results of action, which is yoga yuktatma, the one who is committed to yoga. What yoga? Karma yoga. So then this is a exclusive Vedantic club teaching. An elite club for those who are following the Bhagavad Gita, and for the rest of them, Bhagavan is not even in sight, not even in the in the running. And so Bhagavan is not going to try to win them over. Here Bhagavan is just waxing eloquent about whatever you do this, etc. So this teaching could become what? An expression of Ishvara's favoritism. How come only some people are getting vimukto mam upaishyasi? We saw in verse 26, you're going to be free of ragadvesha and you're going to gain me. All this we saw. How come only some people are going to gain Bhagavan? What about the teeming millions of people in the human race? So, therefore, the next verse puts this kind of a wrong thinking that Bhagavan is partial to rest. 29. 28 also we said. Sannyasa yoga, 28 also we've done. Yeah. So, samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dveshyosti na priyaha ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya mayi te teshu chapyaham. Yeah. So, dismissing that, he says, Samaha aham. I am the same. See, there is a sameness between the word sama and same. Must be having the same root. Samoham, samaha aham. Where? Sarva bhuteshu. Among all beings. Sarva bhuteshu aham samaha. I am the same. How do you say you are the same? Read forward, Bhagavan will say. Name dveshyaha asti. There is no one who is the object of my hatred. And there is no one who is beloved to me. Meaning, specially beloved to me. Everybody is beloved to me. Nobody is specially beloved to me. And so, this means there is no nairgrinya dosha on part of Bhagavan. This was already talked about at length in the bhashya to the second chapter. And what was the bhashya to the second chapter? The part where he is talking about how Karma Yoga protects and how people who follow Karma Yoga do not come to any harm. So there Adi Shankara raises and answers the question, does Bhagavan have partiality? What is the answer? Definitely. Why? Because that's what I experience in my life. I do the hard work, the neighbor gets the promotion, I do all these things and somebody else does that. And even when the stars are bad, my horoscope is worse than somebody else's. This is the experience. One looks around and sees somebody else is having a better stint, a better life, a better house, definitely a better car, a better spouse, a better everything. Then why I am like this? And unbeknownst to you, that person is thinking the same thing about you. That person is also thinking the same thing about you. And so, samaha aham sarva bhuteshu. I am the same in all beings. And this other part is also very important. Name dveshyaha asti. Name priyaha asti. There is nobody that I am particularly favoring, or there is nobody that I particularly detest. Why is this not possible? Why is it not possible for Bhagavan to detest? Anybody? Because, exactly, because everything is Bhagavan alone. Unless I have a medical condition, I cannot say I don't like this hand. Bad hand. Why? It's me. There is some kind of a mental condition. Sometimes the hand is seen as a separate thing and then one is scared of one's own body part, and that is like a exception. As a rule, I'm not worried that this hand is coming to get me. Oh, here it comes, watch out. Not worried about it. Why? This is me. And similarly, the right hand and the left hand are not at loggerheads. The dominant hand and the non-dominant hand are not fighting against one another. You think you can write, I can do many other things. No such enmity or no such competition takes place at all. Why? Everything is I. So from Bhagavan, just like my whole body is I, the hands don't fight with one another, much less the feet, and then everything is me alone. So I can't hate one hand and love another hand, not possible. And so similarly, for Bhagavan, this whole universe is what? Himself, herself. The universe not being separate from Bhagavan and all the bodies of all the jivas not being separate from Bhagavan, it is not possible to hate something that is yourself. And so, name dveshyosti na priyaha. Priyaha means finding somebody as a favorite. So you hate one hand but love the other leg. Now that is not possible. Neither of those positions are tenable. Name dveshyosti na priyaha. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. So all I am asking here, bhajanti means those who are committed to me. Sevante, those who choose me, those who are committed to me with devotion. Ye bhajanti tu, whereas those who are committed to me with devotion, Maite means they are in me. Teshu cha aham. There is a oneness. There is a oneness between myself and those devotees who seek me. Sincerely. Between myself and the devotees who seek me sincerely. Who are these people who seek me sincerely? These are the people who are bhaktas, sadhakas. So between myself and the people who seek me sincerely, there is a oneness. You can say, I exist in them. And then what else? They also exist in me. I exist in them and they exist in me. What is this? They exist in me, I exist in them. Non-separation. Non-separation. Here we go again. On the first line, what did Bhagavan say? I have no favorites. But those who are committed to me, they are one with me. What about the other teeming masses? They are also one. But the only difference is, these people know it, these people are seeking that oneness, or either they know it or they are well on their way to knowing it. The others don't know it. That's all. It's not that only these people are favored, these people are selected, these people are groupies of Bhagavan. No. They are, they are having, what is that? They are having a little label or an armband to identify, oh, you also are part of Bhagavan, you also, I am also. No. Vaikuntha bound. No such thing. Maite teshu chapi aham means that there is total oneness, because what is the object of their quest? Me. What kind of a me? Me as non-separate from their own self. That is the object of their quest. The object of their quest being me, in fact we can say that they are, I am in them, they are in me. It is that oneness which what they are seeking is already there. The seeker is the sought. There is no separation between the seeker and the sought. If the sought is me, the sought is the nature of the seeker. So that's why there is oneness. It's all me. But then the rest of the people, they don't know this. They don't know this. They go about their day, and then when things go really bad, they see Bhagavan as a tool. Much in the same way as we might use a hammer or a screwdriver, Bhagavan becomes a tool to tighten my prarabdha. My prarabdha is loosening everything and letting all the karmas freely. So let's just tighten this, and then let's just give it a little thwack over there. Let me just make this. So Bhagavan becomes a tool to gain what I want for the rest of the people. So what do they see? They see Bhagavan as separate from themselves. They see Bhagavan as a helper, and they see Bhagavan as what? Helping somebody to get whatever they want. This is how they see. So in their minds, Bhagavan and them, they don't want the Bhagavan to be one, because all the goodies will stop. Who will I ask? If Bhagavan is myself alone and I have to focus on this oneness, then who will I go for my daily needs, my daily affirmations, my daily validations? Where will I go? There will be nobody. And a lot of people say this. A lot of Dvaitins, dualists, will say this. I don't want to be the sweetness. What do I want to do? I want to taste the sweetness. Very silly argument. It's a totally silly argument for many, many reasons. I don't want to be the sweetness means what? Do you have a choice? No. You're already that. Raso vai saha. You're already sweet. I only want to taste the sweetness. Whatever you are tasting is already sweet. You are sweet, you are self-evident, and that sweetness is self-evident, so it is not a matter for a special experience. If this sweet Brahman became a special experience, then what would happen? There would be a birth date and a death date, because experience by nature has a start date and an end date. Experience is finite. If Brahman were a special sweet experience, you want to taste the sweetness which is Brahman or which is Ishvara, then you have to start. Okay, I have to have a palate cleanser so I can taste Bhagavan very nicely. Let's see what Bhagavan will be like. 3-string sugar syrup, like that which is found at the bottom of a gulab jamun syrup. So I put that on my tongue. Nice taste. Wonderful. And then what? It's done. It's over. If Bhagavan is a finite experience, then what's the point of studying about myself being Bhagavan? Because what I am seeking is the infinite. So why will I settle for one more finite experience? No, it's infinite sweetness that you keep tasting and tasting. Poor tongue. What happens to the tongue? If you're just, dipping it in sugar syrup constantly, what will happen? It will dull, it will not taste it anymore. It will become fat like a prune. It won't taste anymore. And so, therefore, this is a silly argument, because Brahman, Ishvara, is not a matter for experience as a specific, special experience. It is Anubhuti Swarupa. It is the truth of the experiencer. Everything you are experiencing Brahman all the time. No, right now I am experiencing a backache. What is backache? Brahman. No, right now I am experiencing lot of diffidence. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I go here? Should I do that? This diffidence, this hesitancy, also what? Brahman. No, but I want to experience pure Brahman. Where shall I get? Do you think that we are having polluted Brahman? No, you are only giving examples of Brahman with name and form. I want to experience sheer, pure Brahman without name and form. It will be like one of those elephant jokes. What is the elephant joke? How did the elephant climb up a tree? How did it climb up a tree? It sat on a seed and waited for it to grow. Okay? All right. Now where is it? It's up on the tree. How did the elephant get down from the tree? It sat on a leaf and waited for fall to come. This is how forced it will have to be. This kind of an argument. If you want to experience Brahman, this is what it will be. Every experience cannot be had without Brahman. Whatever you are experiencing is Brahman. Experiencer is who? Okay, let me give you a small hint. Whatever I say, the answer to it is what? Very good. Who is the experiencer? What is the nature of the experience? Who is the object of experience? Brahman. What is the means of experience? Brahman. So Brahman is that which is that which is the content of the experiencer and the experienced and the means of experience without being none of them. It supports all of them without being none of them, and so we cannot say that Brahman has to be a specific experience. It cannot be a specific experience. And so, ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya, bhajanti means here sevante, bhaja sevayam. The root word bhaja has the meaning of seva, meaning commitment. Those who understand this, those who want this, for them, I am in them, they are in me. And why not the rest of the people? Because they don't know. And instead, they do want Bhagavan, but they don't know that they want Bhagavan as the truth of themselves. So that the wanting of Bhagavan is scattered and morphed into object pursuits. This will make me happy, this will make me well known, this will make me rich, this will make me powerful. In this way they keep experiencing and they keep going after many, many things. And so this is the thing. Mayi te teshu cha api aham. Now, then the question arises, out of the people who don't know Bhagavan and who are not even that interested in knowing Bhagavan, we can divide that into two broad categories. One is, how can you call them? Basically dharmic. They are not troubling anybody, but they do have a boatload of desires that they are trying to fulfill. And they are just going about their day, going from one thing to another thing, and all the time they are just busy, fulfilling what? Various desires. This is one group of people. The other group of people are impatient. And not only that, they have a low, what is that? DQ, Dharma quotient. Not IQ, DQ. Dharma quotient is very low. For example, if you gave them a questionnaire, do you think it is wrong to defraud people? And you gave them 3 choices, always, sometimes, never. They will choose sometimes. They will choose sometimes it's okay to do this. Is it okay to kill somebody? Yeah, sure. Sometimes. So, like this, that dharma quotient is low. And as a result of not following dharma, they have landed up in hot water. They are in trouble. Why are they in trouble? They have followed wrong means. Like our Nishada. Who was Nishada? Hunter. Who later comes to be known as Valmiki. What did he do? Waylaid all the people. Stand and deliver. What? Your neck in my sword. He used to kill the people, then only talk to them. Not much use afterwards, of course. And then relieve them of all their gold and everything as people were going from one village to another. Then he has a tryst with Narada. What happens? He has a transformative experience. First of all, he is very angry. That day he has not got any mal. What is mal? This is some kind of other people's money here in this case. He's not got any nice fat purse, fat sack of, nice small sack of gold. He hasn't been able to get. He's very frustrated. He ties Narada to a tree. Give me that bag. Here, take. What's in there? 2 rotis somebody made for my journey. 2 chapatis. You are welcome to have. One or both of them. Have all of them. And Narada is very upset. What do you mean? And besides, nobody had spoken to Valmiki in this manner. Nobody had said what Narada said to him, which is, you are wrong. Because most of the people were afraid of that they would be stabbed to death if they were to say something like that. They were all afraid. What does this fellow say? You are wrong. Narada says you are absolutely wrong. You are accruing papa. And if you don't let go of these terrible ways, so your life will come to no good. Then he makes a hurried trip home to see if any of the family members will share his bad karma, his papa, so that he doesn't have to shoulder all the papas. And his reasoning is, I'm killing the people every night in the forest, those who dare to cross the forest. Why? So that I can feed my family. This is his justification. Low dharma quotient, I told you. As though that's the only job left in the world. And so all the family members, children, his aged parents and his wife, they say that it is already our papa karma to be in your life, to be a family member in your life. So we are not going to share your papa. This is on you. We didn't tell you to become a highway robber. This is on you. So the Valmiki that comes back is a changed person, full of remorse, full of trepidation about how many horrible things he has done. And he is told to wash off his papa, to atone for his papa by sitting in one place and chanting Rama, 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 Rama 1 billion times. And that is what he does. Chants the name of Lord Rama 1 billion times and then does prayashchitta, atonement for all the papa karmas. Now, will or can Valmiki get moksha or not? Yes? No? Yes. And that is what is detailed here in the next verse. Api ched suduracharah bhajate mamananya bhak sadhurev samantavyah samyak vyavasito hi saha क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वच्छान्तिं निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्तः प्रणश्यति. Yeah. So now his very beautiful verses. Apichet, if there were to be what? Suduracharaha. Duracharaha would be enough. Achara, conduct. Not what you have with your food, pickle. No. Achara, conduct. And then durachara, wrong conduct, adharmic conduct. Su and dus cannot be used together in the same word, but here su plus dus plus achara. Sudurachara, well entrenched wrong adharmic conduct. Apichet, if somebody is there of that kind who has well entrenched adharma and riding roughshod on people's sensibilities. So if there is somebody like that, but they have seen, and this all the Bhagavad Gita is not going to say, she is a lady of few words. So if there is somebody like that and they have atoned, done prayashchitta for their deeds, they have done. And so they have understood that Bhagavan is the only way and I have to understand myself as Bhagavan. So bhajate mam ananya bhak. What do they want? Ananya, oneness. So they have seen the wrongdoing, they have taken accountability and responsibility, and then they, so such a person, Bhagavan says, sadhuhu eva samantavyah. Consider this person a sadhu. Much more of a sadhu than somebody who hadn't done anything wrong, because after doing this wrong, it is very difficult to retract or retrace one's steps from that action. Wrong action, adharma, becomes an addiction. So the more you flout adharma, the more you see you can get away with that, the more one wants to keep on doing that. It's like a thief. What will the person given to stealing do? They'll go to the shop, first steal something very small and innocuous, so that if they are caught, they can just say, oh, it was so tiny, I forgot. I thought I'll pay for it, but I forgot. Shoelaces or a small little something. First they will take away from the shop. And then, did they get caught? No. Lucky day, fantastic. Bhagavan was busy catching someone else, and so they were spared. What did you do the next time? Also they will steal shoelaces? No, this time they will go for something slightly bigger, and then more costly. Like this. Emboldened, they will go, they will multiply their efforts and become well entrenched in this wrongdoing when all the time. We are not talking of such people. We are talking of people who were well entrenched in adharma, in wrongdoing, they were not righteous in their actions, but then they have understood the pressures that because of which they chose to act in these ways. They have taken responsibility and also, more importantly, made reparations. Sometimes it happens. You see this in the news. In New Zealand it happened. Somebody had taken one elderly man's money on the bus. This pickpocket stole the wallet because he had followed the man to the bank. What is that? Where the money comes? ATM machine. He had followed him and then saw that he made a big withdrawal, followed him then to the bus stop, and whether while they were waiting in the bus stop or in the bus itself, the elderly person got vairagya. The wallet was taken away. Then the thief happened to be sitting right next to this man, and the man explained. He just fell into a conversation. It was a fairly long bus ride. And then he started to say, oh, my wife is suffering from cancer, and then many of these procedures are not, not coming under the insurance money. And then I have to hire more help for her. And then so I'm going. Thankfully, I had some money in the bank. I have taken it out. I'm going to hire an attendant. I'm going to do this. This man is sitting there listening to all this. Who? The one who relieved him of the wallet. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't want to go to the police. He's afraid that people will beat him up and take him to the police. He just keeps quiet, finds out where the man gets off, which bus stop he gets off, where he goes, and then a few hours later, that day, he also goes there and then keeps it incognito. Very, very sorry that I did this, I should not have done this. There is an atonement and there is a reparation. That reparation is important. No, but where will I find the person I stole from? Doesn't matter. You don't have to find the same person. You give that whatever one has stolen, you give it in dana. Give it in the form of a donation. And so like this, the people who are now on the path of dharma, not only dharma, but now on the path of Vedanta, that Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute. 5th chapter tells us that. The fire of knowledge burns all the karmas up. And so here, what are they into? They are into Vedanta, they are into finding out the oneness between Bhagavan and themselves, and this is where they are completely oriented now. So you can safely bring them to Vedanta classes and satsangs. They are not interested, what are all the things you keep on you? What are the things in your purse? They are not interested. They are only interested in Vedanta now. So such people, Bhagavan says, should be given a chance for redeeming themselves. Because if you condemn them, then you are condemning a seeker who could have made a difference. So to have somebody who knows what is adharma and now has given up those wrong ways, it would be a very powerful interlocutor on the behalf of all the people, a very powerful spokesperson. So therefore, apichet suduracharah, but Mam bhajante ananya bhak, but is devoted to me fully, totally. Devoted to finding me as the truth of themselves, they are devoted to me fully. Such a person should be considered what? Sadhu, a harmless renunciant. Sadhureva samantavyaha. Why? Samyak vyavasito hi saha, because this person is now thinking clearly, thinking properly. Very beautiful. And then, next one. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. Now that they are committed to the dharma, with the help of Vedanta Shastra, what will they become? Quickly they will become an embodiment of dharma themselves. They will become those people who absolutely cannot flout dharma, no matter what happens. And as a result of this knowledge, and as a result of being a dharmically together person, so one is the way of life, being dharmically together, put together person, and then the other one is what? The vision of Vedanta. Because of this, what happens? They are to be considered sadhus. They are well on their way to moksha. So because of this, they become incarnations of dharma. And because of being incarnations of dharma, embodiments of dharma, there is no conflict in the heart between the doer and the knower. Usually there is a conflict between doer and knower, between what is good for me and what is not good for me. I know this is not good for me, but what will I do? Keep on eating it. So here the person knows. The person knows this difference, and then therefore the person then becomes dharmatma, and then finally get what? Shashvat chantim nigacchati. Nigacchati means goes towards gaining ultimate shanti. Ultimate shanti is not death over here, okay? Yeah. Already very few students of the Bhagavad Gita, and then people will translate this verse and say, put it in red letters and put the bookmark there in the next printing, and then say, watch out. Watch out. If you study the 9th chapter, then Ram Nam Satya Hai. So we can't do that. And so therefore here, Shashvat Chanti means a peace which is moksha. Moksha here is known as peace because there is no subject-object difference. There is no difference between me and another. That means what? There are no arguments. There is nothing to argue because I see that this is how they are. What if you don't agree with them? It's okay. I don't have to agree with them. They don't have to agree with me. We can agree to disagree. And so here, this particular set of people who were not dharmic have become dharmic. Why? Because they want the self-knowledge. Finally gain the self-knowledge with the help of the teaching, of course, guru teaching, all that we have to bring. How do they gain self-knowledge? The same way that has been, Arjuna is gaining the self-knowledge, asking the teacher question, going to the teacher, sitting in front of the teacher and studying, etc. So therefore, this trajectory happens. They atone for their wrongdoing, they become dharmatmas, they gain this knowledge that is not said here, we have to supply, and then therefore they enjoy peace beyond understanding. No argument, nothing, everything is an extension of them. The life of the jnani is a very peaceful life. And then he gives a promise at the end of the 31st verse. Kaunteya, he Kaunteya, Arjuna, pratijanihi. Here is one more promise. There was one promise earlier in verse 22. Therefore, the 9th chapter is full of promises, is therefore considered extremely important. So, in verse 22, what did we see? Yoga kshemam vahami aham. Whatever you want and whatever you don't have, whatever you need is going to be supplied by me. Why? Because you are busy studying Vedanta. And I like that. So when you study Vedanta, I will run your chores for you. I will run your errands. And then we saw that was a promise. And here one more promise is coming. What is that? Name bhaktaha pranashyati. My devotee, who is my devotee? Myself alone. And what am I? Satchidananda. Do I come to destruction? No. So if I don't come to destruction and my devotee is is an incarnation of me, is non-separate from me, that means the devotee will also not come to destruction. This is at the Paramarthika level. On the Vyavaharika level also, meaning that whenever one is in dire straits and thinks of Bhagavan, Bhagavan does not disappoint. What happened to Draupadi? 5 husbands sitting right there in the sabha. Foolish people, they wagered her even though in our dharma, women and children were never seen as property of the man. Never ever. And so still, this is what they did, and they even though they knew better, they wagered them, pawned them off in this game of die. What kind of game of dice? Loaded dice. Loaded dice means it is cued. They put some lead or I don't know what they put, so that they know how to throw it. The people who know it's loaded, they will throw it in such a way that it will always 6, 6, 6 will come. For the other people, snake eyes, only that will come when you throw the dice. So like this, the die was cast, their die was cast because of this game of dice. And then they wagered their kingdom, they wagered Draupadi, and then these people behaved like animals, beasts. In the assembly, Dushasana said, she's ours, let's have some fun with her. Let's remove her sari, shameless fellow. And all the Pandava brothers looked like this, helpless. Pained but helpless. And that's when she lets them have it. It's a very wonderful monologue in the Mahabharata. And then she says to Lord Krishna, are you going to be a witness to this? Are you going to be comfortable being a witness to this wrongdoing, the disrobement of a helpless woman in a full assembly of people? Are you going to let this happen? She calls out to him, and then what does he do? He comes at the last minute and then keeps on making her wear so many saris. One sari, second sari, third sari, fourth sari. This fellow is pulling the sari comes off, but then miraculously she is clad in a new and an even more nicer and more gorgeous sari. Dushasana retires with repetitive stress injury. He has shoulder problems. Now he needs surgery, not in one, but both the shoulders. Very sad. But Krishna comes running and then saves. So therefore here, Name Bhaktaha Pranashyati, we can take it in two ways, just like Draupadi's Artha Bhakti, a bhakti of desperation. That call is answered. And then we can also take it in the sense that the one who studies Vedanta is never destroyed. Why? Because you're on a different track. You're on a moksha track there, so the destruction cannot happen. Why can't it happen? Because you know too much already. You know that your body is subject to destruction, but not you. So therefore, my devotee is not destroyed either by self-knowledge. Once they know self-knowledge, they are of course not destroyed, and even otherwise, if they ask for help, I am there for them. And then, next one. Mam hi parthavyapashritya yepi syuh papayonayah striyo vaishyastatha shudraha tepi yanti parangatim. This used to be a dread, this verse, until Pujya Swamiji came along and interpreted it, used to be the dread of every Vedanta teacher. Because it is misunderstood. It is also misunderstood by Adi Shankara as well. So what does it say? It's a continuation of how Bhagavan takes care of the devotees, no matter who they are. So, Mam hi partha vyapashritya. Vyapashritya means taking recourse to me, taking shelter in me. Whoever are they? Who are they? Papayonayaha. Papayonayaha means the people who are born with a difficult and an adharmic parentage. They don't want to steal, but the parents are what? Given to a life of crime. Like the children of mafia bosses and all, this is what is called Papayoni. One meaning. A very compelling meaning. Second meaning is also animal. Animals are called Papayoni. Why? Papayoni means a life of difficulty, life of lot of papa coming out. Animals are called Papayoni because they cannot express themselves, and therefore they become subject to what is that? Bad treatment, victimization. Therefore they are called Papayonis. And we have stories like that. Gajendra. Who is Gajendra? An elephant. And then what happens to him? The leg is caught by crocodile. And then instead of writhing in pain, what does Gajendra do? He plucks a lotus in the river and offers it to Mahavishnu. Then cries for help. And Mahavishnu comes without his chakra. He's in a hurry to come. Without his weaponry. Does not even pack a sandwich. Lakshmi has to courier his chakra. Send it. That's how we have the first instance of FedEx. Okay. And then Lakshmi has to courier this. And then only he comes and then saves this elephant from the biting Graha, the crocodile. So stories like this are there. Hanumanji, another story. His bhakti gives him moksha. And of course he was also a great jnani. So like this, there are Papayonayaha, gaining moksha stories are there. Papayonayaha also can mean people who have difficult and adharmic backgrounds. Now, in the traditional reading, it is said, what is said? That Papayonayaha, then Striyaha, Vaishyaha, Shudraha, you take it all in one go. Stri means women. Vaishyas, traders and tradespeople, accountants and the like. And then, what's the last one? Shudraha. Shudraha means the service people. All of them will also be redeemed. It's a backhanded compliment at best, insulting very much at worst. And so, until Pujya Swamiji came along, this is how people read the verse. So, whoever may be there who are coming from difficult backgrounds and women and the other varnas in the varnashrama dharma, all of them will be redeemed. No. The whole difference in the interpretation hinges on this one word, tatha. Striyo vaishyaha tatha shudraha. Tatha means in the same manner. In the same manner means what? Papayonayaha. So Papayonayaha means bodies of Papa. The women are not the outcome of Papa. The Vaishyas, Shudras are not the outcome of Papa. Papayonayaha is a separate category of the people I described, either animals in need of help or people who have had a difficult background and could be confused about dharma but are really bhaktas of Bhagavan. Then tatha, in the same manner, people such as women. Why women are mentioned? Because by this time the status of women had deteriorated. In India, it was not the same as what the historian Altekar, The Position of Women in Hindu Civilization. Very fantastic book. It's an old book, but please read it. It's really, really good. So there he describes the position of women as not at all what we find here. Slowly he also describes the erosion of the rights of women as chanters of Vedic hymns, as performers of yajna and other rituals, different rituals, as being entitled to the, what is that called? Yajnopavita, the sacred thread, which would make them eligible for Vedic study, which was the first rite of passage for Vedic study. So all this was there before, and even one of the most conservative commentators, Manu of the Manusmriti, writes that the women should have the thread ceremony. Even he says. The only difference was when the girl children were made to have the thread ceremony in ancient India, they were asked to take bhiksha only among the family members, only among the relatives they knew. In the only to the known houses they were sent, obviously for a safety issue, whereas the boy brahmacharis they could go to many other places. That was the only difference. When they grew up, both the girls and the boys, they had an option. The boys also could just continue to stay at the Gurukulam, study Vedanta, and then become swamis, take sannyasa. The girls also, they could finish their studies and get married. Same thing with the girls. They could finish their Gurukula studies and get married, or what could they do? They could become Brahmavadinis. They could also become sannyasis. In the Mahabharata itself, Sulabha, one lady dressed fully in orange, holding a bhiksha and a danda, comes to, comes to have a dialogue with Janaka. Defeats him also in the dialogue. So like this was all there before, but then by the time the Mahabharata time itself, there was a deterioration in the status of women. They could no longer chant the Veda. They were not at all given the opportunity for Vedic studies. And there was all these taboos on what they could and could not do. And so here, women, why? Because of all these taboos, one might think that there is a taboo for pursuing moksha also, which Bhagavan immediately dismisses and says that is not true. Women can pursue moksha. Same thing with, tradespeople. Why are the tradespeople mentioned separately here? Because in the ancient times it was seen that they were very busy, and then even if you taught them Vedanta, they were just thinking of how much profit they would make from selling of their things. This is all that they were thinking, because they were consumed with selling, buying, and they were very busy people, and this is why this would be seen as a deterrent, but then it is not a deterrent, it is told here. Shudraha means what? Paricharaka, the paricharakam karma. So people who are of the service category. Who will bring them to study Vedanta? Nobody. In fact, in the Brahma Sutra there is apashudradhi adhikaranam. And this question is asked. Do the service category people qualify for Brahmajnanam? Yes. Why? Because Brahmajnanam is not dependent on status. This is exactly the purport of this verse. Brahmajnanam is not dependent on status. Brahmajnanam is not dependent on some kind of religious accolades or your position in society. Brahmajnanam is dependent upon the sincerity of the pursuit, an open heart, and the ready to gain this knowledge. Tepi yanti param gatim. They also, param gati is the ultimate end. What is that ultimate end? Moksha. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.